Sup, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to what's going to be pretty much a giant data dump about Obsidian's The Outer Worlds. I'm going to cover some of what happened in the trailer event that they showed last night at the Video Game Awards, as well as some information that's on PC Gamer, as well as some information that was relayed in the gameplay trailer that they showed on Gameinformer on YouTube. So big thanks to them for having all of this data out there and getting the word on this game out. This is a game that started in 2016 and is just now being announced and really took, I think, a lot of people by surprise. And now with this morning's release of the Gameinformer actual gameplay trailer, we can definitely look at the various things that we see in both. So let's just jump straight on in here. Thanks for watching. If you get a chance, share the video. Let's begin. So I'm going to start this trailer over and we're going to look right at the starting. Now, one of the things that we found out this morning is that you definitely do start on a spaceship. You end up coming out of the cryotube. Of course, a lot of what goes on here is a little bit of a shot at Fallout 3. Various different things that you can see within this are actually shots at the Fallout games. Overall, you can definitely notice that. You can see a really high level of graphical detail here on the cutscene. It's not so interesting to me. What's more interesting is gameplay like this and moments where you actually get out and look at the world. Now, I want to stop and look at a couple scenes here. It's really important to remember that this is, again, a game that started in 2016. It's just being shown now. It's Unreal Engine 4, and I think we really do see an increase in the graphics from maybe what we would have expected had this been on a different engine. You do see a good pop to everything. And their color use is phenomenal. The choices of colors to invoke different atmosphere, different feeling are really intriguing. However, one of the things that we do see when it comes to just the icons of this game world and what they were trying to show us is multiple times in which they show these two moons. Now, this is something you're going to see a lot of. And if you look in the top left corner, you can actually see the light from something reflecting on that moon. It's actually difficult to tell exactly what it is. But later on, there's a time dilation moment, and you actually see that adjust. Now, let's talk a little bit about just the different symbols in different color choices and geographical choices and artistic choices they've used in this trailer. The first thing when we look at this, it's definitely got a Western vibe to it. We also see some drug use pushed in the various different areas here. You can sort of see that moment where there's like an LSD flash. And we can definitely see the symbolism of the moons on this different place in this different world. Employment community here, a center. I saw Mr. Matty Plays had said something about that possibly being a place where side activities could be received. And it certainly sounds like that after watching the Gameinformer video today. Again, definitely a Western look. You get the stained glass windows here, which is very cool. But you have that mixture of future and past and future all mixing together with the high-tech overall look of some of the boxes, the containers, the way in which things run. But this has a very Fallout feeling. Like nobody's going to deny, I don't think, that some of these places look a little bit like Fallout 4, especially you have the tower in the center and the wires coming off. I think we all know various different places where that could come. And of course, once again, we have this little LSD moment you can see. And the developers did say in the PC Gamer article that there are a ton of different drugs in the game. Now here we get a good look at some of the different armors. We also see, especially on your character, armor that's got a tube on it going from your chest piece over onto your back. And I think that does indicate some kind of space suit, some kind of suit where it gets its oxygen supply from somewhere else. I just want to sort of look at the color choice here, especially for this next character that we're actually going to see and sort of identify different elements of it. I do feel that for a lot of people, this is going to definitely have a Borderlands, certainly a Fallout, almost a Fable color scheme to it, which is crazy enough, but it was one of the first things that it reminded me of, especially with the brighter oranges, like a Borderland almost, and the splash of white against that. More interesting to me, though, is even the weapon, the bullets that she has on her chest look to actually be colored towards her, the white. And I'm wondering if that has to do with different manufacturers of weapons. And it does seem like it's a big deal to Obsidian to make sure that they use color to identify everything. You also see a really nice depth of field effect here in the cutscene and in this moment where they sort of identify pieces of other role-playing games where choice doesn't really matter and it's pretty much binary. Also here, I think you can see three distinct classes. You can probably see your normal NPC there on the right with the more drab clothing and might even be a merchant in the way they're arguing. And then you've got the mercenary, the fully decked out in armor. Lots of oranges there, the chrome and orange, almost a Flash Gordon look from the comic books, maybe less so from the movie. And we see a little bit later when this footage starts back up that that's basically a robot there. Originally, a lot of people thought just for a moment as it was showing that it was a dude in a spacesuit because of that glow that you see there on the face piece, but it's actually a robot. We'll see that here now in a second. What I did notice was interesting here. They basically point to you having a choice. You see these two characters arguing, and boom, one of the characters is gone. And when I say gone, they're truly gone. In fact, it was a little bit interesting. One of the graphical elements I love is if you notice the steam coming off the gun actually separates when it hits that front sight and turns into two forks of smoke. Very cool level of detail there. Of course, here is where you're told to you be you and just do your thing. This, of course, is a shot at a lot of games with the black and white kind of decision making, and Obsidian has always sort of tried to go out there and do something different. We also see different elements of different spaceships here. We certainly see one that looks like it's within your own area and then others. But let's look at these monsters for a second, because I can cover the spaceships in a moment when I look at the other trailer that came out, the gameplay trailer for Gameinformer. Again, something you just can't argue is the color use of making sure that the animals and the creatures in these areas look like they in some way match the overall world, like natural camouflage would do. And speaking of natural, we start to see some of the NPCs in the game. I actually really like the different NPCs. I think they're done well. I like the different enemy variety that we see here. Now, this is when it starts to sort of hint to you that you have different space and a space exploration. You see the crazy guy here. You also see the different planet ecosystems. And when I was talking about the reflections you can see on the planets here as everything sort of moves. So at the very least, they feel solidified in that location. Now we're going to jump over and look at little still shots and various different small shots from the Gameinformer gameplay trailer that they posted this morning. Of course, as I said, they are the ones who posted this originally, so I'm just going to use very small snippets of it. Feel free to go there and watch that in totality. It is quite interesting. Of course, what would a game like this be if you couldn't be inside your ship, running around, talking to NPCs? We do know via the PC Gamer information that they got about this, as well as this footage itself. This is the interior ship. This is where your team will end up meeting your companions, and it looks like there's some upgradable items within here as well. You can see one character here drinking coffee. And right here, I'm going to leave this up for a little bit, is the bullet points from the various different elements that PC Gamer found out. And I think one of the more interesting elements of this is that if you have a companion with you, their inventory becomes your inventory. You basically gain the ability to carry more. Now, this is something that's come up in so many games where inventory is such a big deal, and people are always fighting with the amount of weight that you can carry, and that works in RPGs. But here we can see what looks like the ability is to customize other characters' rooms, because we see at least one of the characters' rooms with what looks like interchangeable items, but now we see this crazy-ass neon bearded dragon-looking thing in the corner of this room, which I think indicates most likely the ability of the characters to have customizable rooms. And of course, jumping forward a little bit, let's look at the narrative discussion here. There are choices that pop up. Everybody's fully voiced. Boom, you have a dumb choice. This is something that a lot of people wanted when it comes to the ability to pick a choice that goes with some of your stats. Now, we do know via, once again, these interviews that every one of the quests will have 3 different ways to get through it minimum, which means you're fighting, you're basically your heavy firepower, you're talking, and in some way getting through it with stealth. Here we have a new environment, or at least a slightly different one, and you can see that the LODs actually pushed out quite well when it comes to the level of detail that you've got there. You can see the towers in the far off, which what looks like a city of some kind. Also, they've done a very good job making sure that the flora and fauna look in somewhat alien, but they're not necessarily 100% alien. They're not necessarily something that would completely break you out of the immersion of feeling like this might just be that second Earth that they're actually pushing in the gameplay trailers. You can also see in the top left that you have 2 companions with you. So this is a 3-party total that we know of right now. It'll be interesting to see how many you can get. Also, when you're doing the character creator at the starting of the game, it's all in first person. You can see your character and how they're dressed in your inventory, and you can see what they look like. But strangely enough, there wasn't a third-person kind of character customizer, which I find a little bit odd, but nothing that's game-breaking. And of course, that could be something that changes later. Also, you'll notice on your character, you have a purple bar, which might equal stamina, might equal something else, and they don't. You also have some dots there that they don't have, so I'm not 100% sure what some of those different graphical indications are. So we're going to jump forward a little bit more. And I just want to talk about Burke's discussion, the talking that you have with him. You are a silent protagonist from what it appears. And then you see, once again, various different options here. And you notice that while a couple of them are informational options, many of them are action options, or at least, let's say, more aggressive, more passive. It does make the game feel like already you're going to have the ability to go out there and have a gray kind of RPG, an RPG where decisions just really are not binary. They're really not 1 and 2. It's very cool. There's also a sense of comedy that occurs in a lot of this. You're going to see everything from diet toothpaste to just all kinds of crazy advertisements. They definitely got in that feeling of just a little bit of whimsicalness. And I think that that works, and it will really nail this and allow for some of the flexibility that Obsidian may want when it just comes to their worldview. Another element of the game that's discussed is the flaws system. Now, this allows for you to basically face different situations in the game, and then you get a perk if you also choose to take a phobia from that. So, for example, if you face off against a big baddie of some kind and you end up living through it, you're able to then pick a flaw from that, which basically means that you'll always have a reduction in your stats when fighting that particular character. But it also instantly gives you a perk point to use somewhere else. And there's a lot of give and take here, and they discussed all different kinds of fears that you could have: darkness, fire, various animals, heights, and so on. Each is only unlockable, though, once you encounter that situation. I love that. It's not one of those mini-maxing moments where you create your character and you're like, I'm going to take this negative because I'll never use it so that I can get this positive. This is really more about role-playing, and it takes in the environment. It takes in the actual situations and choices you've made and makes them more of an active reflection on the actual game, because that phobia will always be there, unlike, let's say, you making a bad decision and then 5 cutscenes later somebody mentions it. Now, as you can see, the combat here, it certainly is an if you hit them, you hit them, if you miss them, you miss them kind of thing. There is no RPG Alpha Protocol moments in the title. However, there is what we would call VATS light kind of situations in the title. You do have the ability to slow down time with a skill, and that allows you to manually aim easier, but it does not allow for you to take the full-on over control that VATS allows. I would say that the gameplay here in this video, again, this is early, is a tiny bit rough when it comes to the combo, but you can see here quick weapons. All of the weapons having a large number of particle effects, a large number of laser effects, just a very lived-in feeling to everything. There's almost nothing here that doesn't reflect, for example, like you just saw there, off of an enemy. And I think that that shows an extra level of detail that we don't see in some other games where you have that sort of self-illumination or illumination from a weapon on to the game world. Also, and I won't play it because I don't want to take their audio, but I do want to show you guys, there's a number of audio processing effects going on, especially in discussions. You can actually hear the person's voice coming straight to you, but also bouncing off the walls around you. In larger locations, the guns here have a great sound. You also see that really cool, very small color change that occurs on your sights here on this gun when you've actually lined up a hit. It sort of takes the place of the cursor. Now, some people have said the cursor seems off-center. That is definitely noticeable. I don't know why that is exactly. I'm sure we'll notice in a second. But here, once again, you see those lighting effects. Everything turns red as you're hurt. But more interesting is just that weapon and the changes that it makes to the environment around you and the glow that it creates. It really does make it feel, above everything else, like you're a part of the game world. We see so many times where a game, you fire and it just leaves a decal or something like that occurs, and there isn't that mixture of you making an effect on the game world. That is definitely, at least from what we've seen, not something that occurs here. Also, I do like the way there's different effects from where you hit. You see that elbow, you see a bit of the shoulder where this weapon ends up hitting, and a good deal, once again, of particle effects to sort of give you that oversaturated look. Now, whether everybody's going to like that, I don't know, but I think for a sci-fi game, that works for me, and I'm pretty happy with it. When it comes to combat itself, one of the questions that was asked is, can you do a pacifist playthrough of this? And the answer was technically no, because there are some robots you'll have to fight. They don't 100% know if somebody will be able to sort of figure out a way around it, but that wasn't really necessarily, or at least it doesn't sound like it was necessarily a big strong point on their decision. It was something where, you know, sometimes you just have to end up fighting somebody, whether it be robots and so forth. But it'd be interesting to see how many people out there try to game the system and figure out ways to do it, because we've seen that if gamers are anything, it's tenacious. So just switching back to the full trailer here to discuss a couple things. There's so much data, so many different elements to this title. Modded weapons, weapons that can be environmentally adjusted so that they do different kinds of attacks, as well as just overall being upgraded. Obviously, there will be a planet-to-planet flying system. It appears that there's 2 planets. It appears that there's a planet that is basically fully industrialized, or at the very least colonized, and then another planet that is not, where a lot of these different creatures you end up seeing in the trailer and in that gameplay video that you're going to end up facing. Now, one area where I think a lot of people are going to have some dissatisfaction with the original idea, so I want to describe it, is there are no romancing of the companions at this time. They considered it, but decided against it. I've been one of those people that really hasn't been happy with any of the romance kind of situations or quests in almost any game. I've always felt that it never feels just fast or just slow enough. It always feels like A, B, 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 A, and you've had sex and it's just over. It's just a series of quick decisions, and then suddenly everybody's fucking. It doesn't appear like they're going that way. It doesn't mean that they can't change that or put something in. And they're talking about the companions themselves. It states nothing about no companion or no main character and NPC relationships. That absolutely could happen. Hacking, lockpicking, skills like that are all actually going to be passive and based on the skill. There's not going to be mini games for those, so be prepared for that. There's 6 skills, the typical ones you would expect. Each one can go up to 100. So you could basically consider that you have 600 total points, skill points, that you would need to max out this character at the absolutely top. And then they get a certain number of those points, and each time they do, they're able to gain a new perk. I really do feel, after looking at this, we see Obsidian taking everything that they've learned working with the different companies, their own games, and putting it all together here. They understand this sense of humor. This is a game, again, since 2016. This is from people who made Bloodlines, Vampire Bloodlines, which a lot of folks consider one of the best RPGs ever made, actually, which is strange, but when you play it, you probably understand that. So they made a lot of the greatest games. They made, for some people, arguably the better of the Fallout titles. And we have this here, but we have that real-time action as well as the slowed down one, but you don't really have a VAT system. You have the companions apparently having a little bit more impact than I think they would in a lot of other games. And what you end up getting is a title that I think might be Obsidian's first overall title that is 100% from them and shows the max of what their capabilities are. I think while I love a lot of their games, their isometric games, they're some of my favorites, depending on which ones we're talking about. It's not hard to basically look at those and say that for a lot of people, they don't really grab them. They don't really put them in the feeling of actually being that character. Here, we see that. We certainly do see them focusing on that first-person view, which I think is incredibly interesting. There's so many details going on and being talked about when it comes to this game, and different interviews that are going out, just different things that are being said, different little facts. If you have any questions or any corrections, feel free to put them in the comments. This is something that I think everybody's really excited about. Once again, you've got the Gameinformer gameplay trailer. I really suggest you go watch that. It's just fantastic. There's a bunch of different things going on there. That was a Bethesda player or a Bethesda worker playing the game, and they were able to get that footage. And then, of course, the major trailer itself you should check out. So this isn't going to be for everybody, and I totally get that. But I think for a lot of people, this is a sign of what everybody sort of wanted from Obsidian, and we're finally getting it, which to me is a huge positive. There's so many other positives about this. I'll be talking about it in the International podcast, probably be talking about it in Mr. Maddie's podcast. You should see this video posted up Friday as well. That's it for me. If you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. Maybe share it. That would always help if you shared it on the various different social websites. You can also follow me on Twitter, or you can become a patron on the Patreon website, which allows me to give you guys videos like this and reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.